this is this is who we've got for today.
Okay, great,
Look
no
at it.
problem. Well, you actually picked a great day because I think there was so much going on yesterday that folks were like,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. It's hard to see. So you're getting almost your personalized
Oh.
tour. So beautiful.
Woo.
So we're gonna start right out here. I'm gonna back up my way.
Okay.
So we are standing in what we call our Jose Medina atrium. And this is special to
Okay.
us. Jose Medina was a formerly assembly member and now county supervisor for Riverside County District 1. But during his time on assembly, he worked really closely with other folks and other assembly members, and as well as senators, to get 3.5 million for this project. So this project is
Oh.
kind of an ode to partnership. It is about
Okay.
coming together as community, and there's three parts to it. So that 3.5 million came for about, I think it's 42 million is what it costs for the entirety of the project. As most projects go, it started at 20 million, and then by the time you ended, it was 42 million. But we were so
Right.
grateful that we wanted to name this after him. Behind us is
Oh.
our diversity center, and in real life and potentially in the future, we'll have some openings here in the virtual worlds. But it is our space that we have community space. Behind me to
Okay.
my right here is our Fair Housing Council of Riverside County. That's one of our partner agencies in its office space. The executive director of Fair Housing Council is actually the one of the co-founders, Rose Mays, of our space. And so we are just delighted that she continues to do the work at 81 years old and that she leads
Wow.
that team. They have office spaces varying but they're really here to support community. And then if you look up and around, you see those are apartment buildings. And so the third
Oh.
partner is Wakeland Housing Corporation. They're a nonprofit dedicated to development. And so those are affordable workforce housing. So 20 to 25 units are dedicated to veterans that are currently houseless or on the verge of being houseless. Others are for folks that needed some help and support. And that's really where the story begins is if you
That's
kind of come
wonderful.
over here to our panel, this panel right here, you see photos of our co-founders, Rose Mays and Lali Acharya, and they were kind of bid to do this multi-solver kind of mentality, which was that they brought together these three units because they wanted to tell the stories of civil rights history. They wanted to make sure that we were archiving and continuing them on for future generations, and they also wanted to make sure that they put a small dent in housing, as there was a big need in our county, and then found a space for fair housing. This plot of land
Oh.
was an old house previously, and that's where fair housing hosted events. And so it really starts with them, and we always try to pay homage to the shoulders of the giants in which we stand on. So um,
Right.
I am their first ever executive director. Excuse my bumping into everybody here.
Cool.
But it's very exciting for me to be able to kind of showcase this space. The tiles that Brown Diamond is standing on, those are our donor tiles. So the first group of community, I think
Ah.
about a little over 1 million was raised with folks that were putting their names down, supporting the space and ensuring that their stories were told from here on out. If you look closely over here, where I'm standing, my dad's name, because my dad is no longer with us, but it was important for us and the
Aw.
family to be a part of it. And so these donor tiles really signify the importance of community and that this space was built for the community, by the community, and will continue to sustain as long as we keep community at the focus of it.
Oh.
And so I like to start our tours there. I know we got a little time together, but this over here is our Walk of Fame. This Walk of
Right.
Fame is meant to, I think the bigger goal is that it runs all the way to City Hall, but we're not quite there yet. It's 27 of our regional leaders that have done work in both counties and had an impact on civil rights, whether locally, regionally, statewide, nationwide, or internationally. And so we wanted to highlight them. They're a diverse group of folks. You'll see like Arthur Littleworth, who was huge for voluntary um, integration of schools and led the school board through that. You see Rupert Costo, which was a member of the Indian Rights Association, the work that he's done, Tomas Rivera. You can go down the line of these wonderful folks that have done the work and continue to do the work. As you get down towards the end, as I mentioned to you in private conversation, but Justice Fields here, he became a court commissioner in 1991, and then he became the first African American jurist in Riverside County. And in 2000, he became the first African American judge in Riverside County. And then from 2007 2008, he served on the presiding judge of the Riverside County Superior Court. And then in 2017, he was appointed to the 4th District Court of Appeal. It took many shots at that because he was just disregarded because of him being a black man. And so the community had to
Uh-huh.
come together and support and make sure that he got to the rightful place of where he needed to be. And so we honor him here. And then in our in real life exhibition, Homegrown Heroes, he's also listed there. So if you follow us on
Cool.
socials, you'll see him there. It continues around the building. Um, I think you're following me. So great. Continues around the building. We have our co-founder,
Oh,
Rose Mays, Kay
okay.
Smith, and Connie Confer. And then we have spaces for 3 more. So over the next 2 to 5 years, we'll do like a community nomination process. Folks will be able to nominate. With nomination means you'll pay for it too, because these cost about $10,000 to put into city sidewalk. So we're
Right,
hoping
right.
to add 3 more. And then over here where Rich
Cool.
is standing is our time capsule. It was sealed in
Oh,
August of 2022, and then we plan to open it September 1st of 2072. So 50 years. So the building went up in
right.
October 2022, but we really didn't open to the public until January of 2023 because we had to make sure we had everything set and good to go. So we're
Right.
very excited. Any questions so far? I know I'm talking quite a bit.
No, this is amazing, and I have to go read all of these now. But no, I have the website up on my phone as well. The building, like I did a really great job of making the building look like the building.
I know. Well, listen, I was
It's
so
so
impressed. I
good,
couldn't believe it. It is really good. And
right?
I think we have what we've been excited about is the rendition of the building. Most folks say you build one and then your building looks nothing like it. And now I can say we've successfully put the building up in real life and it looks like the
Yes.
rendition. And Rich and Brown Diamond have done the work to ensure that it continues to look the
Okay.
way that it's supposed to. So it means a
Okay.
lot to us and we're
Yes.
excited about that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right. So as we enter the building, we're going to be talking about our very first exhibition. So before we go in, I will tell a little detail about the gallery space. It is called our
Okay.
Riverside African American Historical Center. In gallery space, and the reason why that is they were really the very first organization that put in the seed money. They gave us $100,000 to
Right.
build this space and make it what it is, and
Right.
so they developed an advisory for that first exhibition and they built it out. It's called Still I Rise, the Black I Fight for Justice. It is named
Right.
Still I Rise. If you're familiar with Maya Angelou,
Her
Angelou and
poem.
her,
Yeah.
yes. So you'll see that in the pillars and we're very
Okay.
very excited about what that looks like. But it also is this idea that although there's been some really tough across the county and across the region, some awful things that have happened, the Still I Rise signifies the resilience of the community, the conversation,
Right.
and that the Civil Rights Institute is going to be truth tellers. So we're not
Right.
pretending like some of this stuff didn't happen, but saying rather. And it's especially important this month as we believe at the Civil Rights Institute that Black excellence should be spoken about year round. But we also
Right.
need to make sure we have some extra time and highlight it during Black History Month. And so as you go through, I just ask that you take a minute, reflect on not only celebrating Black History Month and those that we want to recognize, but that it's important that we remind community of the Black folks and African American folks that have really shaped and continue to shape this region and the world. And the only way to truly recognize them is to make sure that we're spending some time and learning about them. So,
Right.
all right, I'm going to enter into the space. All right, so here we go. I'm going to come back here a little bit so you can see. So when you first enter, yeah, those doors are pretty tricky. So when you first enter, it's our Still I Rise, the Black Eye Fight for Justice. Something we were really proud of is throughout the space, we put QR codes so the learning doesn't end. Oh, I think you may be too close to the door. Or maybe I'm too close. There we go.
Okay.
Maybe
Good.
we were
I
too
triggered.
close.
Okay. Good.
There we go. So we put QR codes around the wall you're next to is our acknowledgments. So those are all the folks that were on the committee. The very first curator of the space was Dr. Vince Moses. He was the director of the Museum of Riverside for some time, has a rich history of the space and what it looks like. But we start by telling folks what it is, right? For 8 decades between 1890 to 1970, um, Klan terror and Jim Crow really drove thousands of blacks from the deep South. So they came to California. So it was like a migration of sorts. And what does that look like? And so we wanted to make sure that this is the story of our community builders, why they're bold, they're business minded, these Black folks in the Black press and all they've done. But this very first item you see here, if you get close, is the green book. It was an actual green book that we had in our space. We returned it to the original owner, but it highlighted the spaces that were safe for folks. Everything is very intentional. Even the font that we use was brought together by a Black entrepreneur. And it was named after suffragists, a female suffragist that isn't given much credit. And so it's important that we talk about all these things. As you come into this space a little further, I don't know, there you are. So this wall here is the pillar of fire that led them, the Black church, Black organizations, and self-help tradition. We wanted to make sure that we paid homage to community, and the best way to do this is talk about the importance of Black church. It's a pillar in the community, and it was really just this place to build and spark so much in Black America, and especially in the Black IE. There was just a bedrock of community, and it talks about Black life, where the connections where folks can continue to build. And so we wanted to highlight that and for you to see it as one of the first items in the exhibit. Then you look at Black organizations and the self-help tradition. So you'll see um, Black IE excellence, and the excellence of organization really comes from these restricted membership, right? They built that out, right? They weren't allowed to be in other fraternities and sororities and social organizations. So they responded by really interlocking and building out with active religious, social connections, political connections. You see, NAACP, National Council of Negro Women, those all built out. And so there was a tradition of finding resourcefulness, connection, and building those out. And those still exist to this day. So we have a photo here of Alpha Kappa Alpha, which is great. And then we had the Fellas, which is the IE Black men's organization, and what they were dedicated to building. Behind us here, let me see, is the Black press. So you'll notice, even if you look back to this first wall, the voice, a lot of these photos came from one particular source. And that's why we thought it was important to highlight the Black press. You'll see these photos throughout the entire space. You'll see connections in different ways. But the Black press was essential to telling the story, not only because so much of Black culture was missed because it wasn't talked about in standard public newspapers. And so you have a few different, you have the Black Voice News. We also had a pop-up exhibit where they celebrated 50 years of the Black press. We had the founding of Freedom's Journal, the Colored Citizen. And so it was important that we highlight that this dialogue, right, they had to be able to talk about things from a Black perspective. And although Black culture is not a monolith, they did a pretty good job of telling the variety of perspective, and we're excited about that. So we're going to continue on to the next section. Let me get my bearings here. I feel like I'm really high up, like I stepped on something. Maybe I did. Okay. So straight ahead, building opportunities. So in this little space this is about housing. You also see, if you look up top, you'll see some of our sponsors where I told you that Riverside African American Historical Society Exhibition Center, long title. So we say RAWS, that's how we call them for short. But this whole section is about home ownership, building opportunities, Black developers, but it's also about the truth of what happened. Redlining, it still impacts us today. I mentioned this last night. There was more Black home ownership in the 1930s and 1940s in the region than there is today because of things like redlining, being priced out, gentrification. And so we want to tell those true stories. Black developers were not given the same set of resources. They didn't have the MSN. They couldn't just type some things in. They couldn't look at the same things. And so what they did is when they found a place to build support, they used their networks. They went to the churches. They helped folks buy homes. And they kind of used the teach the teacher mentality, a train the trainer mentality, and they would bring folks up into those systems, and they would fight for affordable rents and connections. So you see, in 2017, 2 million households of color were rent burdened, spending more than 30% of the household income in rent and utilities. So in 2018, Riverside saw the highest rates of rent burdened renters. And so in 2019, the California Tenant Protection Act enacted a statewide rent cap, and trying to prevent eviction law, right? And what that looks like. Behind you in this beautiful wall, you'll see what we talk about is Black home ownership. So there's a beautiful dress here. It's many years old, and it was an activist, and the beauty of that white dress. But right next to it is Amina Carter's wedding dress. It was wedding garb, is what we're referring to it. I don't think we should call it costume, although it's maybe labeled that way. But it's garb because it showed so much culture. Look at the beauty, the gold, the Egyptian tones, so many folks and what it looks like. Um, I think we have a guest outside. He looks like he's trying to get into the building, so hopefully he
You gonna
finds
go
the
get
door.
him?
Pan African, if you head out to the front, there's some glass doors. Can you see? Come on in.
What's happening, brother?
Thank you for making it in today. So we're just partially through. Appreciate it. My name is Sabrina Gonzalez, Executive Director here. Excited to have you. And we're talking about the importance of Black home ownership, but also the beauty of culture. What people forget is if you're not allowing folks to have home ownership, then you're not allowing them to spread culture, right? I don't identify as Black,
Or
identify as
create wealth?
Mexican, and create wealth, but also this
Yes.
conversation, right? Like wealth is not just about land and shelter, that's great, but it's about rich culture. And so when you prevented folks from having Black home ownership, you didn't all show up at grandmother's house and learn a tradition. You didn't pass stories on. And a lot of culture, especially communities of color, the culture is based in oral histories, right? And what that looks like. And so we have to acknowledge that when folks aren't given the opportunity to have home ownership, that you're actually removing the layers of it and what that looks like. And so we talk about those elements, and so that was the beauty of it. Back here behind me is Fight for Home and Fair Housing. The importance of this map, it signifies in the region we had it as space that it's called baseline, but for many years it was known as race line, and that was just a colloquial term because it was a divide. If you lived in one area, you looked a particular way. If you lived in another area, you had to live and look a particular way. And the controversial pieces of that are clearly stated in the fact that people couldn't live in either side if they looked a particular way, right? But more importantly than that, when folks did finally make it to the other side of it, they were hit with awful derogatory language, impact, negative pieces. And so we actually have a story where a family, they moved to a different location. They were on what quote unquote was the wrong side for them. And what happened was their house was firebombed. Mother and child passed, and then some weeks later, the father passed as well. And for the longest time, the community would refuse to say what is an accident. And so it was fought for the real story to be told. And that's why the Black press holding people accountable is important. And we still are having these conversations. And you'll hear me more talk about how freeways were used as weapons. And we have to discuss that. So, again, I want to keep an uplifting tone, which is why the space was built to talk about it. But we have to be truth tellers here and talk about these impacts that have long term. So if you follow me again, if you look at that pillar, the Still I Rise poem is up there, which we appreciate. But we're going to move into this section. If you look to the wall, you might have seen Obama and Kamala Harris. So Barack Obama, Kamala Harris. Those are busts that were donated to us for the Riverside African American Historical Society. And what we had them for this exhibition. We were lovely. They're the only two items that are not from the region, but we wanted to celebrate Black excellence, and so we have them in here. And something I will say is we have kept them in our IRL exhibition space, and we keep them at the front door because, again, we want to make sure that we're paying homage to Black excellence, and we keep them there. So if you look behind me, Stater Brothers case, 1999. So we had a conversation about censorship. So you'll see one sign. Some generations think we should censor completely. Some generations think there should be no censorship. So we found an in between based on what our committee members who identified as that cultural group wanted to share. But this Stater Brother case is 1999. That was not that long ago. And although they had a no tolerance kind of policy, they weren't following by it. And 12 Black warehouse workers sued Stater Brothers for racial and bias, derogatory language, and negative. And we had a retired civil rights attorney who's a current volunteer, but at the time she was a civil rights attorney. She actually represented the 12. She proved they weren't following the no tolerance policy and that it was a problem. And she was able to win that case for them, and they got funds. They also tried to do this very performative, right? You see in this newspaper clipping, the NAACP says management in Stater Brothers is not racist, right? They tried to go to an organization that because they have this connection with the organization, because even though at these lower levels, supervisors were doing terrible things. The owner, Jack Brown, he really was someone, he just wasn't passing that down the layers. And so we had to also address that maybe as an owner, you were doing the work, but you weren't training folks. And so we had to be honest and talk about that. So that's a case that we discuss here. Also, fight for fair employment and labor in the IE. This beautiful photo is of the Stokes Mercantile. So there was this bustling space where Black folks came in and purchased their items, and you see this family, very excited outside. And so we want to tell both, the difficult times, but also the beauty of it. I'm going to head to this back wall. I'm going to back up a little bit. You'll see a life size, what we would say a life size of Dell Roberts. He's a staple in the community. This back wall is our education wall. He didn't have a traditional path. He started as a campus supervisor, then he became a vice principal for discipline, and he started Black student unions. He was getting connection. He was community advocacy, and we really call them the super educators in the fight. Dr. Lula Mae Clemens, Dr. Margaret Hill, Superintendent Renee Hill, who is the first person of color to head the Riverside Unified School District, which did not happen until 2021, which is baffling, right? But we have to have those honest conversations. If you look down to the ground, you see some history in this roundabout of some of these cases and the impact that they've had. And then Riverside was one of the very first communities in the nation, if not the first, that did involuntary segregation. And I'm sorry, integration from segregation. My apologies. But it was important, this integration of schools and the process and what that looked like. It sparked from a fire at one of the local elementary schools. And then they used that opportunity to bus students and really focus that story looks like. We have this wall here that talks about 3 key Black professionals, Black military service, also businesses in the IE and what that looks like. We should all ensure that we're booking joy. We owe it to the ancestors. So you see the go-kart organization. We see the car clubs. We see Miss Irma Asbury, one of, I think, just an amazing person in general. But she was the first, in April of 2007, actually, she was appointed as a Black female judge of Riverside County Superior Court, the first. Surprising how long it's taken, but we're excited about that. You see Dr. Deborah here as well, and that work, as well as Chief Michael Moore, who just recently retired, but he was the 21st fire chief and the first Black leader of the Riverside Fire Department. And so setting just the tone of that, as well as our military service. We're not given enough credit to the folks that really put on work and to fight for your country and then come back and be treated the way that they were. So we wanted to ensure that we highlighted it and had them and had a space for them so people understood their stories. We're going to head over here and we're going to continue on the conversation about representation and fair representation. If you mentioned, I know Pan African, you came in a little bit late, but Justice Fields here, he was not viewed in a way. He was always dismissed to come up to the position that he currently is as justice, and it took so long, and it took a lot of community members to say enough is enough. He went through, I believe, 4 different times before he was finally appointed to his position at the appeals court, and that was by Governor Jerry Brown. But it took a lot of community members to say it was well deserved and it needed to discuss that. The West Side Action Group came about, and they've served for, over 50 years of service now. But what happened was San Bernardino had this bustling space. There was Black home ownership, Black shops, brown folks that were doing that. And then they put in a freeway. And the freeway was meant to divide. All the on ramps and off ramps went into the white side of the community. So you couldn't even access that side of it. And so what happened there is those shops couldn't survive it. And so we talk about the freeways used as weapons and why it's important to have bigger conversations. And that all folks aren't built the same, right? So you have Mayor Deborah Robertson here, but then you also have current Mayor of Fontana, Aquanetta Warren, who is conservative and provides a different perspective. And so, folks are layered, which is important, something we talk about here. Also, this Fontana turnaround. Okay, it's not lost on us that in this exhibition dedicated to talking about Still I Rise, the Black IE Fight for Justice, is that we have this large photo of the KKK walking through the streets of Fontana. If you have not read the caption, does anyone have a guess at what year that photo is from? Any guesses?
Probably
2025.
no. Looking at the card in the background, it's probably from the
68.
60s.
60s, no, that is from the 80s. That's a photo from 1981. And you were right, Nubian Queen. We have to discuss that. There's been an influx. There's
Yeah,
in the high desert, Temecula, right? These neo-Nazi components of it. But this is
right.
1981 without a shame, just walking through the streets. And
Hmm.
now Fontana has a black mayor, right? Like, and that's still layered and like I said, conservative elements to it. But there has been a turnaround. There's more uh, population, brown and black folks in the area. There's still these pockets that are still happening. It needs to be discussed. And what we say here at the Civil Rights Institute is that there's much work that has been done and there's plenty of work that still needs to be done, which is why these exhibits, we want them to last. And we're so grateful to Rich and Brown Diamond for continuing this dream of ours, which is to ensure that these go into these worlds where more people get to learn about them. So on this back wall, you'll see 3 TV screens. When they're up in the space, this is about claiming our space. We have one here, Moreno Valley, which is the blackest city. So not just in Riverside, but in the entire Inland Empire is Moreno Valley. And so it discusses that. We have a movement on San Bernardino on the west side. That's when I was telling you about the freeway used as the weapon. And then we have claiming our space. It's Riverside. What it looked like, how we manage it. There's story maps. So when you scroll through, check out the links, you can build from there. They talk oral histories. They tell the stories of folks not being able to use a swimming pool. What are the triumphs, the differences, things like that. And Moreno Valley still stays as the blackest city in our region. And mapping Black California, Dr. Kathy Gudis, Dr. Jen Tilton, uh, University of Redlands, UCR, they helped us put these together, as well as Black Voice News, which I mentioned earlier. We're going to go around another pillar and we're going to talk about a few different items. So, the intersections in the fight for justice. So, as I mentioned, former Assembly member Jose Medina got us 3.5 million, but he was also the person that pushed through, with the support of others, the bill for ethnic studies, which comes into place in 2025. So, state of California has mandated that freshmen take a ethnic studies course. You can take it higher up as well, but at least one course during your time. And so we talk about that, right? UCR Magazine celebrating 50 years for African student programs, Chicano studies, stopping Asian hate, right? These are these intersections in the community, the conversation. We are working and we're hopeful to get money from the county to become a resource center, which means our exhibitions will be ethnic studies based and we'll get this curriculum in the classroom. And that is our goal and something that we're working towards. Behind us, where Rich and Brown Diamond are standing, is our No Justice, No Peace wall, right? My name is Taisha, and how important this story is. So, Taisha Miller, and you'll see these 3 images next to her larger image from Black Voice News. Black Voice News kept her story for 2 years on the cover of their magazine because it was important to tell this story. So, Taisha, some are dubbing this as like the first Black Lives Matter kind of run of things. I don't think that everybody in that movement would call it that, but that's how we're distinguishing it here. But Black fatalities by police really gained national attention in 2020 with the Black Lives Movement and the protests. But there are other, items that occurred before. And so in 1998, it was right before the new year. Taisha Miller was unconscious in her car. She had gone out with her friends and some family. She was at a gas station. She was parked there. She was unconscious and she had a gun in her lap. Her family tried to wake her. They couldn't. They called police for support. And then she becomes a victim of police abuse shooting. Um, they tried to knock on her window. They broke it, startled it, and then he opened fire. 21 or 23 bullets, I believe, were shot, 12 hitting her, killing her instantly. Obviously, communities in an uproar, as they should, right? The Riverside County District Attorney refused to file charges. Um, and in the greater Black community and just community in general, this really seemed like a failure. So folks stepped up. Her family member, Rev Bernal Butler, photo you see to the right, he really stepped up. He brought in, there was other folks like Al Sharpton and some bigger names, but then unfortunately in Texas a few weeks later there was a lynching. They had to go to that. So Rev Bernal Butler really stood for the cause, protesting for over a year. Nonviolent protests, stopped traffic on the freeway, the interchange, if you know the area. And what was so important to that was they continued on until they had better community and police relations with the Riverside Police Department. They started a community police review commission that still exists today. They were able to get state mandates that were put together for how policing and what it looks like for community policing. There is still plenty of work to do, but I will say our Riverside Police Department is held accountable. I can't say as much sometimes for our sheriffs, what they're working on. But this story, and then there's a photo of another one of our volunteers, Andy Roth, who closely worked with the family and was able to be their attorney and bring some justice. Those police officers were prosecuted, which was crucial for this case and what that looks like. And again, just some accountability. And so it was important. Rev Butler is no longer with us. He passed away January 2nd of this year. But we are so grateful that we're able to get his oral history, and he's in our real life current exhibition called Homegrown Heroes. We're going to head on over and we're going to talk a little bit about entertainment and sports. So, the conspiracy of silence, right? Fight for equality in sports and entertainment. So many folks were leading the way. We have stories of folks that couldn't get into golf clubs, but they were natural athletes, folks that were comedians, but were dismissed or not allowed to play in certain venues. And so, we wanted to talk about that, right? Why it was important that we discuss these folks, the work that they did, and that they really led the way for so many others. The IE has produced a large number of remarkable athletes and entertainers, even though there was historic segregation and to try to hold that back. And so we wanted to talk about it. You have Cheryl and Reggie Miller, Greg Bell, Barry Bonds, Alex Madison, Kawhi Leonard, so many folks. And right over here where Rich is standing, our fight for equal rights and entertainment. Let's all be honest, there would be no Elvis Presley if there was not a Little Richard, and more people need to say that. And so Little Richard's from our area. James lived here as well. Edgar Hayes, who was a famous pianist and led a musician for Stardusters Quartet. And he had a beautiful career, but they're not given the credit that they deserve, and we wanted to highlight them in this space. Where Pan African is standing, we have our Field of Dreams, Equal Rights and Justice in Sports. You see this lovely artifact, a helmet that was put together. This is Alex Madison's helmet. He is an NFL player with the Vikings. Did great work, but he says he's San Bernardino through and through in his heart. Comes back, he runs clubs and classes and workshops for folks. And then Kawhi Leonard, this photo, large on the walls, him with the mayor at the time, Mayor Gutierrez, and he donated a basketball court and a Field of Dreams to the space. And his foundation is run by, I believe, his sister and his his mother and his aunt still is in the region, and great work is happening. I've been talking a lot. Sorry. I hope that's okay. I get really excited to talk about the material, but please stop me if you have any questions. On the backside, as you follow through, you're going to see more photos of Rev Butler under arrest. I believe he was arrested like 27 times in 1 year. And Andy Roth was there every single time for it to get him out. This photo is Save the Dream March, Stop the Violence. It was a non-violent protest from Riverside in 1999. You should see some big names there, right? You see Rev Jesse Jackson. He's leading the Dream March with Rev Butler. Also, I'm going to age myself here, but I did this yesterday too. Is there any celebrities that you might see here? Some R&B celebrities if you look closely. I hope there's someone that you recognize, and I'm not, putting myself out there a little bit, but anybody see? But if not, that is Babyface out here, and you'll see his ex-wife in the middle right here. But you have Babyface that was out here in Riverside and doing the great work with us. Something that we're also proud of is in this back wall. Thank you. Yes, right there, Pan African pointing to him. But our Black IE honor roll. So what was really important to us for this honor roll is that this work could not be done without the support of everybody in community and all their folks that maybe didn't have their picture up because it is, only 1,500 square feet of space. The Black IE honor rolls that were so big in the community and the work that they did. And so I wanted to make sure, and we were grateful that we were able to list them out. So you see a variety of names and folks that did the work. We didn't capture everybody. We tried to capture as many folks as we can, but it comes with the territory and the story and what that looks like. So please take a minute to look at those if you can as I finish this up. And then this last one, I'm going to walk on over here. kind of almost like you're walking out, but not quite. And you'll see post-its on this wall. How will you fight for justice in the IE? So something we try to do in our spaces, we try to have some engagement at the end. Our current exhibition, you pick up a token, you drop it in. That you know how that works. This one is we asked folks that were visiting. We had over 10,000 visitors in our first year, 225 events, 40 partner items. You know all these bits and pieces that were so crucial to us. But we asked folks to write on a post-it what was it that they're going to do, and you'll see some of this, right? We're going to love, we're going to be kind, we're going to try to work against stopping racism, vote, be courteous, ask questions, lead with curiosity, all of these things. And so we asked folks, and then it kind of turned into a scrapbook. And we're just so grateful that Rich and Brown Diamond could put this together in a way, but it is an engagement wall so that we leave you with how are you going to, sort of a call to action. And we try to do that with all of our exhibitions so that it stays on your mind. You connect, you have conversation, all of those good things. So I am trying, that's about our tour. I'm happy to answer any questions, walk back around if anyone that needs anything. But I'm just so delighted and appreciative that you guys came in. I know we had a big showing yesterday as well, and we have 2 more tours. So please invite friends, post to your Instagram if you feel good to it. Take a photo with us or of us, and we're just so grateful, and I'm happy. Like we've done it, and you guys are here.
A wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thanks for
enjoyable.
coming.
That's
Thanks for
Oh, you're
Yes.
very welcome. I gotta go.
Any
I didn't see a camera
questions?
location and no questions. I would have interrupted you. Like
Okay,
I have a
good.
green book. When I saw it
You
on the wall, I'm
do?
like, wow, well, yeah, I looked on eBay and searched for it and found one. So I
Okay.
wanted to have a physical have one, because
Yeah.
but it literally has the restaurants you could eat in, the hotels you can take. It has the I saw I'm like, oh, they got the green book.
Yeah, and
So that was very cool.
our local university, so University of California, Riverside, their African student program, they provide a green book of sorts to their incoming freshmen. And what they do is they provide spaces that are Black-owned businesses where you can go for your haircuts, where you can go, and so that there can be continued connection out in the community. And so they were really delighted to bring their students, and the students connected with that because although that was used as safety, that's still an element that folks want to talk about, but it's a way for
Right.
them to connect as well.
Exactly. Share history and learn where to
Exactly.
get your hair done. Because for Black people, you have to know where the shop is. The
Mhm.
men
And
need
you,
the barber.
I was going to say, and you have to go off of someone's recommendation, right?
Right,
You
exactly.
you go to the wrong spot. That's you for a while.
Just stop for a minute.
Making sure,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
It's
then
like
you're in a hat all
restaurants.
day.
That's you
Yeah,
for a
exactly.
Yes,
while.
has somebody eaten there? Do you know someone that ate the food? They're like, well, no, I just heard word of mouth. Well, let me know when you know somebody that ate the food.
Exactly.
I am not going to test it for you. But this, okay, I got to
Nubian
find my
Queen.
photo spot. Yes.
When you take your picture, if you could also
Yes.
post it on that gallery that's on the front over there.
Don't I just post
That
it
way
to
it
the
goes-
world?
Yeah, well, it might go on there. If you hit the post button on there, I know for a fact.
Follow
it'll
me
go
to the
on
front. Follow me to
Okay.
the front. I'll show you.
there. Yeah. Yeah, so after you take it, you just hit the
Oh,
post
add
button on
post.
that.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh,
I'll
that's
do
pretty
that.
cool.
Post.
And then it'll go on here with all the rest of them.
Can you post it here? Okay, so you can take the
Yeah,
open
this
camera.
just yeah, you gotta open.
Got it.
Woo!
Let's see. I'm
What
taking.
do I want?
There we go. Hey. Beautiful job.
Thank you so much for
So does
coming
it-
in. I was glad. I was like, we have too many glass doors. No one knows where to come in the space. So I'm glad you.
Yeah,
I know.
I don't
that
know.
I
definitely-
came
I
in
don't-
listening, so I would have
I
found it.
think that most of the people that was trying to come today got lost. I don't know because you had even got lost, didn't you?
Well, I had looked for you, so when I looked in the list of friends, it just says you
Mhm.
as online, and I was expecting it to show where you were and for me to follow where you were from there, but it just showed for you as online and not where you were.
Yeah, it don't.
Yeah,
this
that's what
event-
happened to me yesterday. It was very
Yeah.
confusing.
This event system is very confusing. I'm thinking for the next 2 days, I may not do an event. I may just do it in the natural world. That
I think
way,
that would be great.
yeah, I think I'm gonna do it that way this time. I was trying out this event system, but it's been cumbersome.
It's
Yeah,
So
and it's been a
metas.
little bit
It's
wonky. It's a little wonky.
yeah.
And
They need to figure
and
it
what we
out.
can do is tell folks that if like folks couldn't make it tonight, if you want to get in
Mm-hmm.
and post to that, that interested list, we can do
yeah,
another date or something. I'm happy to do that because I understand, that folks wanted to. And
yeah.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
we extend the number that can fit into the world. I don't know if that feels good to you. Or 2 segments that night, like I can really cut it a 20-minute and 20-minute or something. I just want to work to you work so hard to get folks in, and then I want to make sure that we're making it happen for them.
Yeah, you're
Sure.
maximizing the
Yeah.
times and
Yeah,
the amount and the
Yeah.
interest too, because
exactly.
this is
Because I think people can they can hear me and then decide to walk at their own pace, even if they
Walk
don't
at
want to
their
be
own
right by
pace,
it.
look around.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, and
it's
that's kind of how I was envisioning that it would
yeah.
go.
I planned on coming back anyway, so I mean,
Yeah.
great.
I'd
So,
likely come into these spaces like multiple times, even when people aren't
mm-hmm.
here, because then I can just focus on at my pace.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and you have lots
Yeah,
to
make
read.
a
We'll tell you
private
that much.
instance. Yeah, so there's another one that's going to be on the 24th. And I'm
Yeah, that's
thinking I
next week.
probably will not post a event for that one. I'll just let that one happen in the natural world.
I think it's a good way for us to test it, Rich. So we'll
Yep,
know kind of what works best and get
West
some
works best.
feedback. It's nice to know,
Definitely.
like, because I had some trouble getting in because I was waiting